Doing?
That's okay, I'm gonna check with,
Actually need that.
Man, I only just joined and I get promoted. This sounds
Try to be
easy.
quick. Try to be quick.
Err. Be like that. You can start whenever you want, Pete. Be on in a minute. Always forget to preload the agenda that has the link to the Zoom call.
Chris, do you have agenda? Oh. Frank?
I just reminded him the meeting is at 7, not 6.
Here, you want to start?
Did we-
I-
As long as you didn't
Frank gave me his
revise.
if you want to use that.
At 6?
Yeah.
Do you have copies of the agendas over there?
Burn off some more.
Nope, we can print some more off. Looks like they all went, we'll get you some more.
I can also text it.
I just got him, I just texted him, yep.
Okay, so, you ready to start?
I got my, unless you changed it, I have.
No change. Nope,
I
I got
am
it.
ready.
Ready?
Hold on, Mike.
Recording in progress.
I'm the one that did it. Drat. Okay.
I haven't adjusted my sound either.
Recording in progress.
All right. Yes, I'm up.
And then I go back to it.
I'm
I
running.
can't understand why I can't hear anything
Yeah.
tomorrow.
But at least that's a private embarrassment, not a public embarrassment.
Okay, we're ready to begin, finally. Technology is in place. Welcome, everybody, to this is the Board of Selectmen meeting for February 6th. We always remind everybody that we're recording everything, and we always start with a moment to appreciate our troops. Thank you for that. We're gonna do the certificate?
I don't see,
We're not gonna do the certificate.
no, I don't see Chief Carrico or firefighter Cronin yet, so
Okay.
let's just hold off until they arrive.
All right, thank you. And we're gonna hold on Trinity, I think, still, Chris?
Yes, we're gonna do
Okay.
Christian first.
We're gonna do Christian Donner to discuss Rail Trail NOI, Notice of Intent, I think that stands for. Hey, Christian. Dressed for the temperature in the room.
I don't know, it was cold at home when I left. Christian Donner, 92 Green Street. I'm here to ask for a budget of $5,000 for the Friends of the Medfield Rail Trail on behalf of the town to help with the filing of a notice of intent for the installation of beaver deceivers in the pond along the rail trail. So I'm doing that as a volunteer. It is the town property. We believe that it's a permanent risk to be flooded because the rail bed acts as a dam essentially, and we've seen with all the rain last summer that this could happen. And there is a unpermitted, unauthorized structure there too, actually, in place right now. If you recall, this is the reason why we're here today, or the original reason. But there is also more work that needs to be done. We had a site visit done by Mike Callahan's Beaver Coalition, so experts, the state fisheries and wildlife person who is in charge of permitting these kind of devices gave tentative approval, and we have a design in place, and so I need a wetland scientist to do the wetland delineation that Conservation Commission requested.
Questions?
So I just want to make, for my benefit and probably everybody's benefit who has an interest in deceiving beavers, initially there were 2 beaver deceivers that were put in, but they weren't done through proper administrative channels with the Concom's approval. They then had to remain in because not only could they not be put in without approval, but they couldn't be taken out. So in other words, we still have 2 beaver deceivers that are there. They're functional?
One is functional, the other one needs to be improved.
Okay. And what I'm trying to understand is, are we going down the path that says we actually need to do a better job of deceiving more beavers by putting in more beaver deceivers?
So beaver deceivers, that's not something you put in and can forget about it, unfortunately. They do require maintenance every so often. It depends on how well they're built and how smart the beavers are. I
Plus
spoke
pulling
with,
all those dead beaver carcasses out of the ones that weren't smart enough.
I
to
spoke
drown.
with Mike Francis of the trustees last weekend, and he's in charge of the deceivers in Rocky Woods. And I know that there's maintenance that's needed there, so he will be appearing at the Conservation Commission also at some point this spring. So there is the expectation that we're gonna have to do maintenance. It would be great to have that packaged into the NOI. I'm not sure we can do that, but I'll try.
Okay, so the $5,000 that you're asking for here is to pay for that wetlands analysis to comply with the requirements of the Conservation Commission, or is there actual, what I'm reacting to was Dick Judge's email to us about the rail trail functioning as potentially a dam that could break. I'm trying to understand the hydraulics. If we need more deep, if there is really water on one side of the rail trail that wasn't on the other side of the rail trail, that suggested to me that the 2 beaver deceivers weren't enough and they needed to support more flow. Is that, and I didn't go down and check it out, so I don't know, but it.
So a number of, I mean, I'd be happy to go into the detail, but when the
Just the top-
the
just the
railroad was
top
built,
line.
when the railroad was built, about 140, 50 years ago, they cut the original flow of the brook and built a channel on the side of the rail bed. And so on all the wetland maps, they show the original course of the stream, and that's the reason why Conservation Commission wanted a wetland delineation, because we can't use any maps that exist. The reason why, so there are 2 issues with the current structure. One is it's not, the capacity is not sufficient. So based on the site visit that we've done for the kind of area that draws water, there we need 2 15-inch pipes. Currently, there's only one that's working. The other one is plugged, basically.
So here's, okay, I'll cut to the chase then.
Yeah,
So-
hear me out. There's
okay.
one more thing, and then the Beavers built some downstream dams as well to back up the water into the original dam, and so that one didn't actually not do its job anymore, and so that's part of the plan, is to have 2 cascading dams on downstream, 2 cascading deceivers also with 2 15-inch pipes downstream, so that we can mitigate that a little bit, but they will eventually build more dams, and so we'll have to see.
Okay, that gets, then I can get to my question. $5,000 is to pay for the wetland delineation. When you said that there's maintenance costs and things that are gonna be recurring, are there also costs that the town needs to be planning for in terms of paying for new beaver or more beaver deceivers and the maintenance? How does that
No,
get
the Friends will pay for the beaver deceivers, the materials, and,
Okay.
and do the work
Okay,
with
I'm not trying to
volunteers.
force you to do that, just trying to understand.
No,
So
that
this
was the
is,
plan.
this is the thing that you needed.
This is
to
a
help.
one-time expense, yes.
Okay, great, thanks. No more questions.
No, I don't have a problem with it, especially based on the photos that Dick shared, that the worst-case scenario is we get the overflow, it cuts a rut, I should say, right through the rail trail, and now we're spending money to have to repair a rail trail that's not even, a year or 2 old, so
Yeah.
certainly, I support it.
So I guess, Christian, my question is about, if the money is to delineate the wetlands,
It is for helping filing with, so doing the wetland delineation, that will not take $5,000, but helping with the rest of the filing process as well. So there is a time constraint here, and so I'm trying to get this fast. I have a person who's helped us before, who's ready to go, and we need to
and they're
get this.
quoting $5,000 to do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Because, I mean, the wetland delineation seems pretty clear, because, I mean, there's standing water on both sides of the rail trail, so that shouldn't be difficult. That shouldn't cost $5,000 to do,
Yeah,
I guess.
right.
So, have you talked to the Conservation Commission about what the notice of intent should look like,
Yes.
and why it would cost $5,000?
Yeah, there are certain things that we don't need to do. We don't need stormwater report, and some things are sort of excluded. I'll go over this with Bob Hartzell again before we submit it, but based on the initial guidance, I think this is feasible, and 5,000 was his top limit, that would include a public meeting if needed, where, stuff like that.
So I know that from dealing with the trustees previously at Fork Factory Brook, they just, I don't know if they use beaver deceivers there, but they basically just decided to live with the beavers and the beaver dams.
They have beaver deceivers that need maintenance,
Do
and,
they?
and they need to add more, I think, because, as Bob Kennedy knows, it wasn't enough, and we had Hartford Street overflowing recently, so, because that was not sufficiently designed to handle all that water.
So I guess where I come down is that I have no problem supporting this, but I would ask that somehow that, Chris, maybe you be in charge of administering the money for it to make sure that it's needed.
Yes, obviously. We'll be
Okay.
requesting it, so the town is issuing the payment, so I have to sign off on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
It's
think-
also the town filing the NOI, so I'm just.
Yeah, we're filing, you've already given Christian permission for me to sign the application, and I've been working with Christian. I think the $5,000 is a not-to-exceed fee.
I'm not sure that the Conservation Commission is looking for something that's that expensive, so that
Oh,
would be my concern.
I think I got that impression at the meetings that we've attended in talking with them about that, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't been to those meetings. Do we have a motion
All right, motion to approve the $5,000, up to $5,000 request for the beaver receiver,
Deceiver.
what's that?
Beaver deceiver.
Deceiver, yeah, that's right. Because they keep receiving, we're trying to
then?
deceive, so they don't.
Are we paying for the beaver deceiver, or are we paying
No.
for
No,
the notice of intent?
Wetland consultant.
Oh,
yeah.
wetland, I'm sorry, when we started this conversation, I jotted that down, sorry.
This meeting's starting off really good. I'm starting to enjoy this one.
Started making jokes about the beavers when we went down the wrong. The $5,000, up to $5,000 request for the consultant.
Second,
Clean enough?
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, and just so you know, we'll be submitting this as a reserve fund transfer with the warrant committee at the meeting next week.
And Christian, while you're up here, I just want to personally acknowledge there are a number of times when I drive by various entrances to the rail trail on weekends that I see your car parked there and you entering the trail, or as I go by and look up the trail, I can tell by your distinctive hat that you're up there. You usually have some sort of, tool with you to do work. And I don't always stop and say hi and say thanks, but I want to publicly thank you for what you've been doing with that car.
thank you.
It's a
Good,
labor of love.
thank you.
Let's hope so.
Thanks, Christian.
Thank
So
you.
is Trinity ready then? Are we ready for Trinity, Chris?
I think we're ready.
Okay. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having us. I'll tell you right now, I don't have any taglines as good as Beaver Deceiver, so I'm sorry to disappoint. No, select board and guests here and then guests virtually, thank you for having us. My name is Amanda Alberta. I'm an assistant project manager at Trinity Financial. I'm joined by my colleague, who you all have seen since the beginning, Abby Goldenfarb, who's one of our vice presidents of development, and some other guests who I will introduce in just a moment. Are we able to get the PowerPoint presentation pulled up? So I skipped the background about the project because there are people in this room that know far more about the state hospital property than I do, and probably know as much about Trinity's plans as I do. So we're getting right down to the details and hoping today to just provide an update for what 2023 had in store for us and what we expect 2024 will as well. I should also just note that our principal, Jim Keefe, sends his regards. He wished that he could be here tonight. He was asked to attend an event with Secretary Galvin, Secretary of State, who oversees the Historic Tax Credit Program. And after 5 minutes of my talking, you'll understand why it was very important that he attend that event.
I think you made the right choice.
Sorry, just 1 second.
That's okay. Running the tech is the hardest job in the house, for sure.
This is just intended to get everybody suspense level up a little bit.
There we go.
Perfect. Thanks, Frank. So this is, again, like I said, our redevelopment update to the select board. I know that we have the Medfield State Hospital Development Committee, at least a quorum of them here in the room tonight. So thank you, folks, for all of your service to the hospital and for coming out tonight as well. If you'd advance, please. Like I said, a very short agenda today. We're going to talk about the milestones that we were able to hit in 2023, kind of some of the work that really is behind the scenes that, you know, it's not interesting enough to be in the newspaper, but it really is the work that it takes to get a project of this scale done. And then how we hope to continue those milestones into 2024 and really keep the momentum that we've seen going on this project. We'll talk about our anticipated timeline to closing, which I know is topic of great interest for folks in town, and then town support, how we've been working with the town in the past year and what we could expect to involve the town in or ask of the town in terms of participation and support going forward. All right, next slide. So for 2023 milestones and our goals coming out of that, to start very light, we have 2 new team members who have joined us. Oh, if you wouldn't mind advancing, Frank.
What happened to my?
You got Murphy's Law going on.
I'm actually going to pause for 1 second.
Certainly.
Can you share it through Zoom? People at home can't see it.
Okay, while Frank's figuring that out, we don't need the slide for this. So we have 2 new team members in the room that I just wanted to introduce everyone to. In the front here, Dan Moore has joined our team this summer. Dan comes with 25 years of construction experience in Massachusetts, and he's going to be the on-site construction manager for the project. So Dan is intimately involved in all of our conversations with design at this point, with the National Park Service, and then Dan actually, who lives in Walpole, will be the boots on the ground when this project goes into construction every single day in the job trailer. Dan has already started some of his community outreach, coming to town hall, meeting with the Longmeadow and Evergreen neighbors. I think Dan has a meeting in the works with Mo Goulet, the DPW director. So Dan, a neighbor to Medfield, is excited to get started. We also have Greg Lane, who's hiding in the back, who is our community relations consultant. Greg has helped us on a variety of projects. This one, it's interesting. We told Greg at the beginning, this community seems to like us okay, per our town meeting success. So his role here is really just more making sure that with all of the moving pieces that we have going on this job, that our team is actively communicating with the community, so that even if we're working behind the scenes, that we're able to show what's going on, the individual pieces that all really have to fit together to get a project of this scale moving. So we're really excited to have both of them. Awesome. Okay, so I just said all of this. Dan hired, 25 years experience, has been working with MHC at NPS, lives in Walpole. Greg, community relations. Yeah, I think that's it. All right, if we could advance. Thank you. So our critical path items to closing. These are the things that we really need to see movement on before the hospital can go under construction, before we get any units online. And I want to talk about these up front because the rest of our presentation, you'll see how intimately related they are. And so I think this is good framework to keep in mind for really our big milestones. So we need state and federal Part 2 approval. We've actually printed and have at the town hall the Part 2 submissions that went into the MHC, the Mass Historic Commission, and NPS, the National Park Service.
A
So-
small tree was killed for that.
It's true. It's
Do you get to
true.
read that and summarize for us?
So these binders, when we submitted to the Mass Historic Commission, we needed to do 27 separate applications to the to the state tax credit program. So that's what Abby's passing out now. The reason that we killed a small tree to do this is we wanted these to be on file at the town. So anyone who wants to see the building plans or wants to see the types of information that Mass Historic and the National Park Service are requesting can come down to Town Hall, leaf through them at their leisure. We also have a even bigger binder, if that's possible, of all of the clarifications that were requested by Mass Historic and the National Park Service. So through 2023, we submitted for the 27 separate binders in the spring. It took 6 months for them to come back to us, review all of the materials, come back to us with comments and questions about the window detail, some of the historic day rooms, the porches on the outsides, these really character defining elements that they're looking for. So we are submitting our last, what we hope is our last round of clarifications to the National Park Service and to Mass Historic, but getting that Part 2 approval means that we're able to receive federal tax credits and that we have the ability to receive state tax credits. The other side of this is the allocation of state historic tax credits. So for the National Park Service, once you get your Part 2 approved, that means that they approve with the way that you're proposing to rehabilitate the buildings, and they agree with your construction plans. With the state, they go through that same test, but the allocation of funds is done on a rolling basis. And so the applications for that are in January, April, and August of every year. So we applied in August of last year. We did not receive an allocation because we were going through this clarifications process, and they don't receive an allocation until you have your Part 2 approved. So we applied again this January. We're hoping that with our clarifications coming to them in February here, that we are successful in an allocation of state historic tax credits, but that represents about 8 million of our development sources. That's in line with what we see on other projects when we compare scale, but we just need to be in those 3 rounds per year and to keep getting favorable allocations in order for our capital stack to be where we need it to be.
Do those allocations, if you miss one, does that mean you just lost that, or does it just mean you get it? It takes longer to get. It's a later payout.
You apply each.
Abby, nobody at home can hear you without the microphone, so if you could go to a microphone, please.
Yep.
Yep.
You can grab that one, just turn it on the bottom.
And it's January, April, and
August.
August.
Yep.
Mike, is that one on?
Now the green light on.
Hello.
You won't hear it.
Won't hear it. Picking
Technical
it up.
support is on the way.
Hello. Can they?
So home, they'll hear you now.
Hello.
Leap of faith.
Yeah, there's-
Okay.
Yeah, there's no
I
magnification
do
here.
sing a pretty mean karaoke, so don't get me too comfortable with this. But you apply 3 times a year. There will be no situation we would miss any of those, but we had anticipated receiving our first round. We actually anticipated applying in January of 2023. When we went and had a meeting on site with the Park Service, they then told us that they wanted 27 separate building applications. So that delayed us to the April round. When we got to the April round, they said we want all of this additional detail. So we submitted these, applications, but now they're saying they want more detail. So we had about a year delay because of the request for this additional detail. But we would not be in a situation where we would ever miss a round, and you can keep applying even after you start construction.
And our final kind of critical path item is the extraordinary cost funding for the public infrastructure and remediation. So this should be a line that you guys have heard from us over and over again. At the time of our submission of the RFP, we identified that the 9,200 linear feet of public roadways and subsurface utilities and the hazardous materials remediation in the buildings was something that we were going to need to work with the state on grant funding for, which we have good news about that today, but it's just important to keep in mind that this is still something that's out there for us. Next slide, please. So speaking of the good news, the town received 2 grants this fall for the state hospital project, which show great motivation and momentum from the state. For the public infrastructure, like I said, we need 9,200 linear feet of public roadways and subsurface utilities to serve the residential project and the Belforge Arts Center. We retained Anderson Strategic Advisors. This is a firm that's well known at the state level, 100% success rate in terms of garnering these state grants. And the town was the applicant because the town owns the land. So the town received a Housing Works infrastructure grant. This is an infrastructure grant program that supports the development of residential units. It's actually a new program that was started under the Healy-Driscoll administration. So it's something that we're familiar with, kind of the overarching program. If you wouldn't mind just going back one.
Sorry,
That's okay.
we have a couple people asking questions, so I'm trying to navigate that.
Absolutely. I'll be on this one a while, I think. So the program was new under the Healy-Driscoll administration for this infrastructure specifically to serve housing. The town received the second largest award in the funding round. The largest award, I think, was just about $100,000 more than this award. So the town was really at the top of the bucket here. For the scope of work here, this encompassed the design of the public infrastructure systems, so including getting the systems up Hospital Road and onto the campus itself, and then the 1,200 linear feet sewer extension that is just up Hospital Road. So it starts somewhere a little bit east of the Longmeadow Evergreen neighborhood, and it goes 1,200 linear feet to get to the service drive. And then finally, this also included the improvement of the 3 off-site vehicular intersections on Harding and Hospital Road. We have some detail on those intersections, but it's nothing, the select board approved the intersections last year, so nothing has changed there. In our other bucket of funding need for the site remediation, we need extensive funds for the remediation of lead, asbestos, and other hazardous materials present in the buildings. As you all know, when they were constructed in the late 1800s, asbestos and lead were some of the best construction materials around. As we found today, they have some unintended consequences. So again, we retained Anderson Strategic Advisors. The town received an underutilized properties grant for $500,000 in September. So this program has a we're not sure if it's per project or per building cap of $1 million. So with working with the town, we had applied for $1 million. We were funded $500,000. The scope of work here is inspection of all of the buildings. So going into all of the buildings and understanding the full freight of what are the materials here, how much are we seeing, and kind of what would the full freight of costs be to remediate all of these. It also includes selective remediation and demolition in Building 6. Why Building 6, right? So at the time of the application, we saw that our initial estimates have been that we have $20 million in hazardous materials remediation. Doing this inspection of all of the buildings will help to shore up that number. So it should be a firm, not, we expect it to be 20 million, but it should be exactly this number. But since the program had $1 million cap, we looked at, okay, which building could we do for $1 million? Building 6 needs at the time seemed like they were around that price point. And so we chose Building 6 kind of as a test case, applying for this grant that is the only source of funding for hazardous materials inside of buildings, and looked at Building 6. After conversations with the state, when they really understood you don't just have Building 6, you have 27 buildings, they let us amend the scope. And so we changed the scope to being a full investigation of all of the buildings to really understand what we were dealing with, and then the leftover funds to work on Building 6 and get some of the materials abated. Okay, Frank, can we go to the next slide? So this is just looking at the off-site improvements. So looking at the plan here from left to right, you have the state hospital, and it gets smaller, so don't worry about reading. It's state hospital, we have the sewer line extension, and then we have 1, 2, 3 vehicular intersections. So if you wouldn't mind advancing, Frank.
Actually, I'm going to take a moment to pause. If
Yeah.
we could just recognize that Representative Garlick has arrived at the meeting.
Yes. Thanks for coming, Denise.
Hi, Representative. So we have in the yellow circle there, the 1,200 linear feet sewer extension up Hospital Road. Again, this is to serve any development that would happen on the site, residential or the Belforge Arts Center. On the next slide, we can see the Harding Street at West and North intersection. So on the left, you can see the current condition today. And then when we advance, you can see the proposed improvements. Again, these were discussed and decided upon with the select board in the late spring, early summer of last year. And our last series of intersections is Harding Street at Hospital Road. So you can see kind of that triangular pattern that we see today, and then the proposed improvement.
Can I ask a quick question here? This goes to
Certainly.
Christine. We didn't approve the final design, did we?
No.
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 But you got the right side, so.
Okay, as long as, I just want to make sure that anyone listening, we haven't approved that it's going to be a stop at Harding and West Street has
Well, I think
the
we-
right of way.
I think we discussed other
Yeah.
configurations than
Okay,
these.
just want to make sure that we did not,
We haven't made a decision on the configurations.
but we know
yet.
these are where you're working, but we did not finalize who's going to have the right of way.
Certainly. I think
Okay.
I misspoke there. Thank you.
Okay, just want to, I can imagine the emails we're going to get, just want to get ahead of that.
I have the
Thank
same, I have the same point.
Yes. 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 I appreciate that clarification. Yes. So pending review and approval of the select board.
The intersections are correct, what's going to have the
Yes.
right of way is not been.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Certainly. Okay, so those are the vehicular intersections. I'm happy to speak more, but really this is in the hands of the town. So the town received these grants. These are public town roads. We wouldn't expect really to have any say here. We're just happy that the work has been funded by the state. Next slide, please. So to talk about our 2023 accomplishments and our goals, I have kind of three buckets: permitting, historic and design, and financing. So to talk about our permitting, in 2023, we achieved what we're estimating to be about 75% completion in the town permitting. That was inclusive of conditional site plan approval from the Medfield Planning Board. We had a series of public hearings in February, March, and April of 2023. We were very excited to advance our plans, show the town what we were thinking, and drill into detail in those discussions. At the state level, we submitted our MEPA Notice of Project Change. This is an environmental program. The Notice of Project Change restarted our engagement with the state, and we brought together DCAM, the town, and Trinity as parties in this because it looked at the whole hospital campus, all 120 some acres. So our notice of project change was accepted, and MEPA directed us to submit a single environmental impact report, which will be the next step that we're hoping to complete in 2024. Finally, one thing that this group has not heard is we've completed our tree survey. So we couldn't complete it at the time of the planning board because of the foliage, but during summer, when the trees were at their full foliage, we were able to go onto the campus and do a tree survey. That will be part of going back to the planning board in 2024. So looking to 2024, our goal, of course, is to complete permitting at 100%. That has, that's reliant on the schedule of the planning board and also the state review of the MEPA process. In order to go back to both the planning board and to MEPA, we had to have design of the public infrastructure systems. So this includes a stormwater plan. We also have to advance a photometrics plan. So the VHB, who is our consultant that we've retained since the time of the RFP for site and civil engineering, their design was part of the Housing Works infrastructure program scope of work. So as part of the state grant, you're able to apply for funds for design. So we applied for those funds for VHB to design the public roadways and infrastructure network as a part of that grant. So part of why we had to pause on the permitting was we needed to see the outcome of the grant. Part of their design includes accessibility ramps and then also the placement of mechanical equipment that needs the approval from the National Park Service and Mass Historic. And so now I think you guys are starting to see where the puzzle pieces get tricky. We needed to have the review that we did with the National Park Service before we could advance design. We also needed to receive funding before we could advance design, but we were stuck on the permitting until we had both of those pieces in place. I'm happy to say that we're in place now, and we expect movement on both of these items. So hopefully, should the town decide to move forward with the Housing Works Infrastructure Program grant, we should be able to go back to the planning board for final site plan approval with the tree survey, the stormwater management plan, the photometrics survey, and the subdivision plan. So that would be another public process with the planning board, the subdivision plan approval. And hopefully we are able to engage with that with the planning board this year. At the state level, like I said, MEPA recommended that we file a single environmental impact report. So this is something that was very favorable. They had two paths going forward. Our team asked that we be considered under the single environmental impact report, and they agreed at the end of the day. So we're hoping to close out the state permitting process this year as well. This was also contingent on the stormwater management plan. Any questions about permitting while I'm here? It was dense. Okay, we'll advance. Thank you, Frank.
I guess I'll ask. Nobody asked any questions. Somebody's got to ask questions.
Yeah.
Are there, this, if I'm understanding this correctly, this looks reasonably good in terms of you're on a good track. I don't know whether it's exactly on schedule or not, but given the bumps along the way in terms of getting things lined up, are there any pieces of the permitting process, and I'm mostly, I guess, asking around the town side more than anything, because I can't do anything about all the rest of them, but are there any pieces of the remaining permitting process that you have concerns about in terms of being able to, or understand, I'm asking an early question, but is there anything that we should be in tune to make sure we're not making your life harder?
I'll let Abby speak up as well. I don't think we have any concerns from the town side. The town has been nothing but supportive and amenable to all of our permitting. It's really just the sequencing of having the public infrastructure designed and then having that design also vetted through not only what the planning board has already approved, but what Mass Historic and the National Park Service will approve. We're concerned about some of the accessibility measures. So we have a third-party accessibility consultant that we've retained to make sure that we're treating these buildings with the utmost sensitivity, but the balance between what the National Park Service wants to see in terms of what was there in the late 1800s versus the challenges of modern society and some of the building code requirements. So it's just really this dance of advancing design, but not before this group gets to see it, but in order for this group to see it. Thank you. Okay, so speaking of the historic groups, do I see any of my historic board members? Oh, right here. Sorry. I have a nearsighted, farsighted. It's great to see you. So we've had nothing but support from the Medfield Historic Commission and the Medfield Historic District Commission. They have, along with the Select Board, have issued letters of support for all of our applications to MHC and NPS, and we really wouldn't be engaging at the state level that we are without the support of the town. So really thank you and your group. So in the spring of 2023, like we said before, we submitted the Part 2 application to the National Park Service. Then we were told we need a lot more information. In the fall of 2023, we submitted the first round of the 27 separate applications for state historic tax credit allocation to the Mass Historic Commission. So, like Abby was saying, it's kind of this dual path of we need the Part 2 approval from MHC and NPS, but then we also need to be in the funding rounds for the state because they come kind of cumulatively. So in the fall, we received comments and clarifications from NPS and MHC. Then we had our colleague Dan Moore out on site with our architects going in every single building. The photo that you can see on the screen are the different window types that were identified. So Dan, how many window types were there in all of the campus?
There's a lot, but there's a lot of windows in general.
Right.
Now, I think there's like 2,000 windows or 3,000 windows total. It's a lot. I think an icon has been as organized as possible to make them sort of not 1,000 different window types. There are quite a bit. It's really the quantity of windows is what's so is the thing to manage. The types, there's probably 20 to 30 different types.
So just for the folks on Zoom, Dan Moore, our construction manager, just said that there's 20 to 30 window types, but over 2,000 to 3,000 windows throughout the campus. So part of,
Sorry, just quickly, did you find, like, I know, you, if I'm not mistaken, you did the right side of the campus, thinking that would be enough because the left side is supposed to mirror it. Did you find that to be true, that the left did mirror the right, or were there some?
So our architect was able to, there is a pattern on campus. The way they designed it, there's 3 or 4 buildings that are similar, basically layouts, just oriented differently. And so we did find there was consistency between these building types, so to speak.
Okay.
But we had to check every building. So the National Park Service had initially asked us to survey every single window, document every single window on the campus. And then we turned around and said, well, how about each window type on each building? Otherwise, this is going to take us months. And they said, okay, we'll do that. So that's what we ended up doing, essentially.
Okay.
And what was good about that is it advanced our architectural drawings. Now we have building elevations that are basically like as-built, essentially, because they identify every window and every type now. So, and that's going to be half of the project, is getting the windows correct, you know? Yeah,
Oh, good, thank you.
Are the windows all getting replaced?
that's the plan. Yeah, unfortunately, they're not salvageable. And even some of those buildings, at least 3 or 4 of them actually have retrofit windows in them. So there's like a mix, and a lot of them just aren't salvageable. So, and MPS and MHC both know that. That's the proposal.
so Dan, oh,
Nope, we're good.
okay. So Dan was on site with our architectural team, cataloging these windows, actually being inside of all of the buildings. We authorized our architects to do 25% of a design development set. So what does that mean? Typically, when you talk about a design development set, that's like a 50% complete set of construction drawings. So we're 25% into the 50%. So let's say we're at 35%, something like that. Schematic, we say 25%. It's loose. But this was important so that we could advance our plans to the level that the National Park Service and Mass Historic wanted to see. So the process was taking what was approved by the Planning Board in conditional site plan approval, keeping all of those things the same, but on the individual buildings themselves, answering the questions that we had received in order for, hopefully, our Part 2 to later be approved and to start getting the state historic tax credit allocations. We submitted our 700-page clarification package, which is, again, at Town Hall. You can see the big binder. And our second application for state historic tax credits to MHC, which are the little binders. Thankfully, they let us, if there's no material change, we don't have to print that for every single state application. So we're happy to report. And we will not be printing them out again for the sake of the trees. Any questions here? Okay, so our next steps for historic. Just on the next slide.
I think it's,
Does the National Park Service have local representation, or do you have to deal directly with Washington?
Yep, our contacts are in Washington. And we have historic consultants that do work like this all throughout New England. They're in many historic tax credit rounds every year. So they have close relationships with the team. They did a training this year that the National Park Service put on about historic rehabilitation. So we are in close contact. Abby.
just a couple notes. When you submit something to the National Park Service, it's not like you can call up the next day and get a response. So typically there's a 30 to 60 day statutory time period that they can wait until they respond to you. So that's when you submit for one building. When you submit for 27 separate buildings, that timeline it's not like they have 27 separate reviewers. There has been a delay because of the extraordinary amount of documentation. Each one of these books represents a different building. So the books that we printed, if you want to look at building 1, there's a book for it, and that's just part of the timing with the Park Service. Additionally, when Dan said they surveyed every window, it's not just the window panes, it's from the inside, what do every single part of the millwork around the window, they want it documented so that when we go to rebuild them, we can replicate that with a new window.
Absolutely. And I think we were able to tell you this last year that when the National Park Service was finally doing their first site visits after COVID, the Medfield State Hospital was one of the first sites that they saw on their trip up to Massachusetts. So, although we're saying that, you know, it's taking them longer to review than usual, or that this process has been more drawn out than we expected, we have extreme buy-in from the federal and the state level and the local level, of course. But we have great buy-in. There's no one that sees this project that, you know, thinks it isn't worth doing or anything like that. Everyone sees this project and says, wow, you know, seems like a lot of work, and it's going to be spectacular at the end of the day. So looking to this spring, we just submitted an application to Mass Historic in January. We'll submit again in April. Hopefully by then we've done all of our back and forth with comments and clarifications, but I think you guys are getting the sense with just the volume of materials, it's very possible that they still have comments at that time. We again, we'll hope for final comments, and then once that back and forth has finally been satisfied, then we would expect, once we've satisfied the Park Service, that we would get that Part 2 approval, which is one of our threshold items. In the fall, so in that August round, we'd be submitting our 4th application for state historic tax credits to MHC, and hopefully in this January, April, or August round, we'll see our first allocation, and we can come back to one of these meetings and pump our fists together, right? Okay, any questions about historic before we move on? Or design?
I have some, if you want to take them now. The National Park Service, the timing of their credits, do they come all at once, or are they sequential like the state historic tax credits?
You get and Abby can fill in here. Abby's done many successful historic rehabilitation projects. So the National Park Service, you are eligible for X amount of credits based on the total development cost, and then what in that cost is considered to be in basis. So is applicable.
So they make one award then?
They make one award, and then it's structured throughout your kind of closing and construction. When you hit different milestones, you disperse those funds.
When you get your Part 2 approval, it signals that you are eligible, and if you build what you say you will build, those credits will flow. Credits will be purchased by a tax credit investor that will be the money we use to, part of the money we use to build the project.
So I'm just curious, I thought that the Part 2 or the credit or approval was the state? And
It's
does the National
state
Park
and
Service
national.
work off of the state approval?
No, those are separate approvals, separate approvals.
But the state
they're-
comments on
Yeah.
the Part 2 as well. So both groups are reviewing all of the plans, and then they work together. So you wouldn't have like approval from the state, but not approval from the Park Service. The Park Service can offer conditional approval, the state does not. So we really need to satisfy all of the state comments and questions before we'll see an allocation.
So one of the programs that I went to last month at the Mass Municipal Association annual meeting was on converting old buildings. And the developer, who had a PhD in something, he didn't tell us what it was in, told us that he had 19 different funding sources for his project.
Yes.
So it's complicated, obviously,
I believe it.
for you guys to pull this off, so thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on from historic. Financing. So this is our last real bucket. So in the financing realm, we've engaged with numerous state offices and elected officials. Chair Garlick has been our champion in the legislature. We're very lucky to have her and the delegation in Medfield. So we've met with, honestly, as many people as will listen to us about the importance of the project and exploring alternate avenues for financing. And again, that financing is not to build a single unit. It's to address the conditions at the hospital in terms of the public roadways, public utilities, and the hazardous materials that were left over by the state abandoning the property. So none of these funds that we're talking about are really about Trinity's bottom line or how to get units online. That part is all separate. Really, the extraordinary financing we need is utilities and infrastructure and hazardous remediation. So we've hosted group tours on the campus. We've had secretaries of different departments at the Commonwealth out to the site. And like I said, everyone who goes to this site says what you all have said, which is wow, this is a breathtaking campus. This is an asset. And so we really feel like the grants that were made to the town by the state show this commitment, show this momentum, and show their partners in this process and want to see this project get done. We've also, on the private side, so on kind of the residential development, we've updated accountants and historic tax credit investors on the financial structure. So this is not the public stuff that we're seeking with the state, but this is just kind of the private deal of would private equity and would large commercial debt lenders be interested in this deal? Are they seeing the returns that they want to see? And we've received really good feedback. So we've met with Cohn Resnick on the tax and accounting side, and Bank of America and Chase Bank are groups that we've worked with on the lending and historic tax credit investing side. In 2024, we hope to support the town of Medfield with a second one-stop application for the grant funding. So for that public infrastructure and hazardous materials remediation. Again, how that works is Trinity retained Anderson Strategic Advisors. April Anderson there has a 100% success rate with applying and receiving state grants. And so the town, again, would be the recipient. And we would work with the select board and or Christine and town staff to see what scope of work really makes sense for that. Is it getting the next phase of roadways and utilities up to serve the Belforge Arts Center? That's something that are all conversations to come this spring, and we're excited to keep engaging with the state through our support of the town. Ultimately, these are town actions at this time. Mm-hmm. Finally, we're hoping to continue our private project financial conversations. When I say the private project, I mean like the units, building the units. We're hoping to continue our conversations with the tax credit investors that we spoke with, and they're going to provide introductions to private equity investors and also large commercial debt lenders. So we've started those conversations. These groups, kind of in the sequencing of things that we keep talking about, these groups want to see that we're making headway with the state funding that we need before they'll have more serious conversations with the private financing. So it's really just getting all of these pieces to fit together and happen at the right time. Any questions on financing?
As I listen to you talk, I'm starting to form an impression. I just want to check. It almost sounds to me like you could think of this as two projects. There's the project of getting the infrastructure, the remediation done that prepares the field. And that's kind of where the public funding comes in. That's a lot of where we can probably have some, at least try not to get in your way. And then there's the construction project of actually taking the buildings and putting them up and creating what it is you want to create. That's the true classic construction side, although this is certainly not a classic construction project. But I'm guessing that piece of it's got more to do with just pure commercial financing, that it's going to make sense. We probably won't need to be that involved in that piece of it. We just have to get everything ready.
Yeah,
Our
our thinking has evolved over the past year since we were in the RFP and the town meeting process. We initially thought we can do this in one phase. And when we actually worked with the town and went in for the MassWorks application last year, we did propose it as one phase. We made an application for $30 million in private infrastructure, and we were told, whoa, like too much at once, you have to figure out how to phase it. We resisted that really up until the last moment when we realized that, this is a new administration. There's a lot of projects out there. They are focused on housing, but we need to fall within a bucket of the reasonable ask. And so we are, as Amanda said, we're still working many different avenues for funding, but when it comes to the MassWorks funding and the remediation funding, we have realized we're going to have to phase this. So this is a longer pre-development process than we were anticipating, not only because of the public infrastructure grants, but the Park Service and the Mass Historic. So yeah, we are now looking at it as an infrastructure phase and a housing phase. But believe me, if tomorrow we got a phone call saying go, we could be ready on that housing phase in 4 to 6 months.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's just important to note that the grant that the town received from the Housing Works Infrastructure Program, that $4.8 million, was the second largest grant made in the state. So depending on the administration, over the years, we've seen sometimes they'll give awards in the 10 millions or, 7 millions. I think because of the change in administration and the sectioning off. So this infrastructure program used to just be Mass Works, and that funded primarily municipal projects. They sectioned off a portion of that to be Housing Works, and that's infrastructure to support the development of housing. So a real benefit that we're seeing with the new administration is the importance that they're placing on housing creation. It's clearly been something that they've stated as important to them, and they continue to put their money where their mouth is, if you'll excuse the cliche, by creating this Housing Works infrastructure program specifically. I think, like Abby said, the state is also just trying to figure out how do we fund all of the great housing projects before us, and it's really our job at Trinity to let them know that this is the most important one. No, I joke. Okay, I think we're ready to go.
No joke.
Okay. So our anticipated timeline to closing, go ahead, Frank. So like we've been talking about, the change in administration resulted in changes in the agencies governing the financing for the project. So that's what I just talked about with the infrastructure split, the Housing Works. In a lot of ways, we see this as really positive. I don't think we've had an administration that was this vocal about the importance of housing and ameliorating the housing crisis that we see in the Commonwealth today. Communities like Medfield, as all of you know, are very desirable to live in. And so this project has high priority with the state officials that we talk to. So it's a good and a bad thing. It took a little longer. There's some bumps in the road with the new administration figuring out how they're going to administer their programs, but ultimately it's very positive for housing creation and projects like this. The National Park Service and Mass Historic process is taking longer than anticipated due to the sheer volume of materials. Again, folks on Zoom, I would highly recommend, if you want to see our applications, come on down to Town Hall. They'll all be here, and you can spend the next, 2 weeks of your life looking at them.
I say bring a snack.
Yeah,
Definitely bring a snack.
exactly.
Amanda, are those online somewhere or not?
They're not, but we can make them available online.
That would probably help.
Okay. Yep. We can make them available online for sure. And then finally, like we've said, we've engaged with, through this process, nearly every town board, I would say. The state delegation, who have been our champions and hugely supportive of the project, agency secretaries, and the Healy Driscoll administration. We've heard nothing but support, interest, awe of the project, right, Chair Garlick? It's a big one. And we really feel like we have a lot of eyes on this project developing creative solutions for that public funding that you were talking about, which is that public infrastructure, all of the subsurface utilities, which at the end of the day will be owned by the town, and then the remediation, which is currently a liability to the town. I mean, we all saw what happened in the town of Orange last year. For those who don't know, in Orange, there was a delinquent owner of a vacant mill building. The person was not very involved in the upkeep of the property, and there was a fire. And because of the fire, some of the hazardous materials were exposed to the elements, were posing a danger to folks in town. And even though the town didn't own the mill building, they had to put up $4 million to remediate those materials in that condition that was presented to their town. So, whatever happens with this hospital campus, the materials in these buildings are going to need to be dealt with for the safety of the residents in Medfield. And so I think a lot of folks at the state are talking about how to deal with projects like this. The Underutilized Properties Program is a relatively new program administered by Mass Development. It's the only program in the state that funds interior hazardous materials, which is great. I mean, we really need these programs. Like I said, either they're per building or per project cap is $1 million. So we're just not seeing the funds allocated that are correlated with the amount of costs associated with these challenges. My big green box, when the public infrastructure and remediation funding is secured, the project, the private project, the units, the residential could close as soon as 9 to 12 months from commitment. So this comes into that sequencing. Lenders and investors aren't going to be comfortable with really evaluating this project until they know that the infrastructure and remediation needs are going to be met. When they are, the private project can move relatively quickly. This is the only slide I have in this section, so.
I have a question.
Yep.
This is indirectly important to you guys. And on the weekend, sometimes we'll bring our dog up to the hospital. And I've had a number of occasions to just meet people with other similarly friendly dogs. They ask about the hospital. And generally, they don't know that much about it. But some of them know enough to say, when is this project going to be done? Now, what I've been telling them is, well, at one point, we thought it was probably shooting for the end of 26, which might have been optimistic, but that was the date. And I said, I think it might be at least a year longer. Is that a reasonable answer for me to give to people? They're out of town, actually. So they're not like looking to move in necessarily, but some of them have sort of an interest. This would be a neat place. Is that a reasonable answer just to give general public, or should I say something different?
You know, I'd love to say yes. At this point, we're not sure. Right
Well, I say
now-
that part of it. I do
sure.
say that.
Yeah.
These are passers-by
you
that
know,
are just
as-
bigger than a bread box, smaller than a barn.
We're working on the funding. We're working every day. I'm sure, as Chair Garlick knows, we are calling around every delegate, trying to get, the governor just put out a $4 billion bond bill. We are doing our best to make this project on everyone's radar, but I cannot say we will be starting in 2025 and be done in 2027. We are, that's
Okay,
just
so
not
I
how
would say we
we,
would be delighted if this was
Yeah.
done by 27, but we don't know.
yeah, no, we
Okay.
don't know. Again, if we, knock on wood, are lucky and we can pull this funding together in the next year, which is what we're trying to do, then we could start construction 9 to 12 months after. But we're not here to overpromise and underdeliver. We're
Okay, I just wanted to be a
No, I
semi-intelligent
hear you.
answer.
I hear you. I would love to be able to say yes, but
Okay.
but we're not sure. So that's the truth.
Well, and if I heard you correctly a little while ago, what really to me changed the timeline, not respecting everything you're up against, the ideal plan was, as you said, wrap it all in fence, build it all at once, open it all at once.
Yeah.
Right, so that gave us that 2-year window that was realistic.
Right.
But if it gets pushed out for a variety of reasons, that it's quadrant off and it's done in thirds, that could take it. I'm not saying you're gonna do that. but-
Yeah, no, I mean, we are
Need to
still
talk into the
trying.
mic.
Oh, sorry. We are still trying to wrap our heads around we still don't think you can build half a road and half a project and have people move in to half of that site. You know, we're still thinking about, we build the roads and then we could start the buildings as you're building the roads, but we don't see it phased as like a third.
Okay.
We're still, but we're open to that. And again, we're trying to get as much of the infrastructure money committed, and then we will work our fastest to start the housing. But we just our $30 million ask was kind of, slow down, this is great, but you're not the only, housing project in the state. But again, we're committed to say, like, we're the ones who can do it.
Right.
We definitely believe in our ability to do this.
We're working with Secretary Ed Augustus in the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. This is also part of the Healy Driscoll administration, kind of renaming housing and livable communities and having this focus at the state level on housing. Secretary Augustus administers the Housing Works infrastructure program. And so his administration, after our last application, we put in for the full freight $30 million. We wanted to be honest with the state about the real needs here. They said, okay, slow down. We need, no awards are going to be over X amount of dollars. Do a smaller ask. So that's when we looked at, okay, what are the off-site improvements that no matter what happens, the town of Medfield would want these things to be done, would want the vehicular intersections, would want the sewer line extension to the site, and would want some design of public utilities. Again, just for everyone at home, this this is the town's application. So Trinity kind of advises and helps facilitate, but at the end of the day, what goes in the application is subject to Christine and the review and approval of the select board. So we're working with their office. The application for the next round of funding for this Housing Works Infrastructure and Underutilized Properties Program opens in May, end of May, early June. And so between then and now, we'll be meeting with Secretary Augustus's office, asking what kinds of phasing or tranches of funds they see as feasible, and the town will be party to those conversations, and then having discussions and deciding with the town what makes sense here in terms of phasing. Is it perhaps the secretary's office says we could sequence grant awards in such a way over X period of years. It really depends on what they're able to offer, and then what the town decides to accept on the infrastructure. Yeah. And Gus, to your point, I think when folks ask you, sometimes it's helpful to talk about a milestone and then a sequence. So should all of the public funding be received, then the project could close in 9 to 12 months. From the start of construction, should all of the funds be in place? You know, we've said from the beginning, if we were going to do this in a single phase, it would be about a 30-month construction period. Just in terms of doing 28 buildings, there's 27 historic buildings and then 1 non-historic building. So a 30-month timeline is really what we've been comfortable with that sheer volume of buildings.
So I guess I'm wondering how big a gap you have in your public funding for the infrastructure at this point.
Certainly. So the infrastructure full freight is $29.6 million. We received 4.48, so $4.5 million this year. So we have about a $25 million gap there. And then the remediation, our highest estimate was that the cost is $20 million. We received $500,000. However, that $500,000 will allow a full investigation of all of the buildings on the campus, so that hopefully we can get more clarity around that 20 million number, which was us giving a high estimate so that, you know, we were covered.
So you've got a $50 million nut then, and so how much of that do you have to cover before you're willing to go forward?
Abby?
There are ways to potentially handle the remediation in a different way if we were to absorb it into the housing costs, into that project, but we would at least, I'd say anywhere from 30 to 50, we need to show evidence of funding. We need to show that the roads can be built and that we have a plan for that. There's not an investor or lender in the country, in the world, maybe in the world, but would sign on to invest in these buildings without knowing that we're going to be able to turn the lights on and to drive down the street. So, but we are fully confident that when the state recognized this project and gave it the second highest award, that they were committed to working with us. That's not to say it's guaranteed, but we're still at it every day.
So you think that the state will come through with a lot more money is what you're expecting?
We're cautiously optimistic,
Yeah,
but
okay.
again, as many people in our industry could tell you, even if today we had every single private, public source lined up, just given the interest rates, that's presenting challenges across the board for all real estate development, in downtown Boston to Medfield, and the state. So, you know, it's not, our timing is delayed, but it's not, so bad that we don't see a optimistic future.
That was a tough question that you just got asked. And speaking just as one select board member, not on behalf and subject to anything the development committee I'm on tells me after the fact I'm all wrong about, so understand all that. As an individual select board member, the tricky part that we share here is that if the circumstances never line up, and you get to a point that says, and I'm not suggesting you're there, in fact, actually, I feel better after having listened to you, Amanda, than I probably did coming into this. But if the circumstances were such that this project does not happen, speaking personally, I don't believe anyone other than you guys will be able to do this project the way that we've envisioned it should be done to fully capture the opportunities that are there. But as a member of the select board, recognizing that until we know for sure that's going to happen, I have to also be thinking about, so if that didn't happen, what becomes of that land? It's a difficult thing for, on our side, not because we don't have faith in you, but because actually we have full faith in you, and we're not sure anybody else would be likely to do it, which means there would need to be some different picture. And it won't be as nice a I don't mean it threateningly here, it won't be as nice a picture as this one is. So the dilemma that I'm guessing we're both are sort of staring at each other in a way, saying, well, we can't fully pull a trigger until we're a lot farther down the path, and I'm saying, that's fine, I'm happier with what I heard tonight, but we can't help but not have to hedge until we know that the trigger's gonna get pulled. And that's, I just make that observation. You gave a good answer to Pete. I want you to hear as sincere an answer from one of us at least as you can get.
Absolutely understand that. We will not be successful without the full faith of the town and the delegation behind us. If there is a hesitation in the select board, we should stop. But we will not be successful. But this is the most complicated project that our company has ever undertaken in our 37 years of history. No, I'm just saying, it is extremely complicated. We are at it every day. As Amanda said, Jim is at an event right now. We recognize that there weren't 10 other bidders. And we were the ones who saw the vision. We believe in the vision. And if it's not us, I don't know who it will be. It probably won't be anyone. Right. But you will still need to remediate those buildings. Right. And someone will come there, and maybe it'll single family homes. I don't know, but we're not going there, because every day we have to wake up and pound the pavement and commit and tell the administration that this is where we want them to be, breaking ground in 2 years or 1 year. But we will not be able to do this. It's a leap of faith. But we will not be able to do this if we don't have the full support of this board.
I think this board fully supports you guys. We absolutely think this is ideal for the town. The town wanted to reuse the buildings, and you guys are obviously expert at reusing old buildings. I still see that picture of that wall that you created a building out of. Oh, yeah. I don't remember, was that Lowell or somewhere?
Yep.
And I go there fairly frequently. I can't set foot on that campus once without seeing exactly what you are
No, you
going to
don't
be able
have
to
to
do with
look
it.
too hard, but it is complicated. And we walked on your site tour with many colleagues from other firms, and it's a long project. It's complicated, but we're at it. And again, we brought Dan on because we know he'll be managing it. But
I've known Trinity for 20 years.
yeah.
I used to build projects for them as a builder. So there's a familiarity, and for me with the area.
For the folks on Zoom, Dan just said that he's familiar with the area and that he's worked with Trinity on the construction side, working on Trinity jobs at 2 different firms, actually. So
Thanks,
Dan has a
Amanda.
long history with us. A couple Trinity talking points that I know Jim would say if he were here, so I'm just going to be his mouthpiece here. Trinity has weathered 6 financial recessions. We were founded in 1987. They're not accustomed to walking away from projects, and Trinity has put 7 figures of pre-development funds into this project. Also, the state at this point has committed $5 million, which I know when we're talking about the ginormous scope of this campus, it's easy for $5 million to feel small. It's not a small amount of money, as we all know. So we, this fall, Christine invited me to present to the Norfolk County town administrators. And Christine said, I want to show them that something is actually happening here after 25 years of planning. So we feel, as I'm pretty sure that folks in town feel, like this is the most momentum that's happened on the hospital campus to date. And none of this momentum would be possible without the decades of hard work and dedication of folks in this room, folks on Zoom, in all of the planning efforts, in the rezoning efforts. It's really a testament to your town and the buy-in that your town has here. We see the vision that you all have put forth, and we're excited to work on it every day.
Well, we're glad to have you working on it, Amanda. Thank you.
Yes, I have one more slide, and it's just about what best friends we are. So, on our continued partnership. So this is just kind of a litany of how we've been working with the town over the past year, and what you folks might expect we ask of you in terms of like supporting something, not monetarily, anything like that. So we have weekly check-ins with our government affairs consultants. That's so we can be a thorn in the side of everyone except for the delegation on Beacon Hill. So that's just how are we getting in front of the right committees, the right people, having the pertinent conversations. So we're on Beacon Hill all of the time talking about this project. We have bi-monthly calls with the town staff. That's to update town staff on what we're working on, any challenges we might need their help and consultation in, and then to hear about what's going on at town, how we might be helpful, how we might answer questions. That's really helped our process in design, in the permitting process. So we're excited to continue those conversations. A new piece. So we've been reading the town administrator's monthly letter, but we're actually going to be given a section in it. So very excited. The next edition will have our section. And so hopefully everyone in town will get kind of, a 2-line update about what's going on at the hospital. Some of the things I talked about today are a little bit boring. They're not exactly newspaper headlines. Some of the behind the scenes in terms of what needs to be done for all of our puzzle pieces to fit together. So hopefully every month folks will be able to see, okay, this was more of a historic month, or this was more of a permitting month. It can just kind of bring that touch point. We do monthly coordination with the Belforge Arts Center. So that's something that we really like to talk up when we're speaking about this development. Trinity, our Lowell project, supports, it has artists, live work units. Part of Trinity's kind of development ethos has been incorporating arts and arts groups into our developments. And so we're excited to be a partner there, coordinate our design processes, and just keep working together. Again, we're spending a lot of money on pre-development. This is going to be a very impactful project at the end of the day, and we're excited to do so. We expect that the town, should they decide to proceed with the Housing Works Infrastructure and UPP grant awards that were made this fall, that the town would be overseeing the work done there. So we're happy to be involved, consult with the town, but ultimately, again, these contracts will be with the town because the grant awards were made to the town. And so hopefully when we apply in June for our next, when the town applies in June for their next tranche of funding, the state will want to see that some of that first phase of work has been done so that the town is receiving the money, spending the money on what they said they were going to, and coming back for more, that the state is seeing the momentum that we also want to see from the state in terms of the awards.
Quick question on that, Amanda.
Certainly.
The one piece of that award that's focused on the pre-design engineering for infrastructure, it would seem to me that that would be the one area in particular that the town, we may have the job to do it because the money came to us, but I would envision that that would be something we would do in close coordination. Okay,
Yeah,
okay, okay.
Certainly. Thank you for bringing that up. We would anticipate asking the historic boards, the development committee, and the select board for letters of support for our 2 subsequent MHC submissions, really, at this point, in April and in August. So we'll be in touch. And then the town itself, in terms of zoning, we really need you guys to stay in MBTA communities compliance. I know everyone in this room is so sick of hearing those words, I'm sure, and we all know that you're working diligently toward it. So excited to help where we can. That's part of what comes up on our calls with the town of, how can we be of service to you folks in clearing this hurdle? But really, we're hearing from the state kind of how important that is for the rest of the funding that we need.
I think, Amanda, just to put that in perspective so people understand what that means, is that the grant programs that you've talked about tonight and some future grant programs that we intend to be, eligible for, if we fall out of, and we're in interim compliance now with MBTA, if we fall out of compliance, then we are no longer eligible for the grant program. So the $5 million grant that we received, we would not be eligible for any going forward.
That's right.
There's a lot of other money that the town wouldn't be eligible, so let alone the state hospital project, there's a boatload of other money that
yeah.
wouldn't come our way.
And
Well,
it-
plus, the Attorney General has said she'll sue the towns that don't comply, so there's a lot on the line to comply.
Yeah, no, that's our
We
goal.
have a former assistant town manager who's forging that path so we get to see how that works.
Nick
That's
is-
why we sent Nick to Milton.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then finally, we talked about this really in the last section, but as many folks in town know, our LDA, our land disposition agreement, said that we were slated to close March 31st of 2024. Because of everything that we've described today, we are not ready to close March 31st, and so we're going to need to have just a discussion to talk about the extension of the LDA to allow for sufficient funding for infrastructure and remediation. Again, noting all of the many factors at the town and at the development level there.
Okay, thank you. Is that everything?
That's it.
Gus, questions, comments?
Thanks.
Eileen,
You-
questions,
I threw
comments?
all my questions. I'm done, yeah.
No, you know what you said earlier, which makes me happy, is being able to spend the money. If you had said, we want you to start doing a lot of infrastructure work right up by the buildings, and, again, we don't want this to go sideways, but if it should, then it's like, look, we spent money, and so the idea that we can work on intersections and things, like, that's huge, so that we can stay in step, so if the state comes back and checks, then we are in step with you, spending the money the way it was intended based on the LDA, so that was good news to hear. But thank you. I know you guys have been busting your tail, so
Thank you.
we
So
want
I
this
had,
to
I
happen.
had like 4 questions, and then there's a question from a resident, and then I wanted to let Representative Garlick address the group as well. So my first question has to do with the cost of construction drawings. I didn't know if you wanted to share that with people, because I'm just amazed at how expensive construction drawings are. I mean, you talked about the fact that you were like 35% of the way there, because I assume it's millions
Yes.
as a cost for you to do the construction drawings to be able to file for a permit.
Yeah, it's a little bit hard to kind of parse out, but our contract with our architect is in the multi-millions.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay. I just thought people at home would be interested in that. So one of the other programs that I went to at the Mass Municipal Association annual meeting was on the federal monies. There's just tons of it there, and I know you guys are aware of it, but, and it sounds like they're making it very easy to get. You get up to like 50% of your project. I would hope that you guys might even think about re-looking at something like the distributive geothermal. I know you dismissed that because you can't drill enough wells on your property. The town owns a lot of property around there that the town might be willing to let you drill wells in. And if you can get 50% of it paid back, it might make sense to do. I know you've got to get the infrastructure money, clearly. That's what you got to focus
We
on.
actually just had a meeting yesterday with a consultant talking about those federal transportation monies and determining if this project would be eligible for them. At first glance, they're not, just given proximity to rail, and so that was unfortunate to hear, but there's no,
But for the climate change type things,
Yes.
there's just a ton of money for that.
we have our hands full at the moment,
Yes.
trying to get the infrastructure.
Understood.
So that's been our focus.
Yeah, but
Smart.
put that in the back of your brain. On the Housing Works Infrastructure P program, is it?
Yep.
You're just gonna keep applying for that every year, and is that the strategy as to how we're gonna fund you're gonna fund the
We are
infrastructure?
applying for it. We are also having conversations at the state level about other potential resources.
Bonding or
So
something?
We're leaving no stone
Special
unturned.
legislation?
We're leaving no stone unturned. Happy to
But
talk to you.
for the Housing Works program specifically, so the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities and Secretary Ed Augustus oversee the program. In our last application, the town's last application, they asked that before we apply again, we come to them with a plan for how the funding would be phased. So not necessarily that we would construct a third of the buildings, a third of the buildings, a third of the buildings, but how they might be able to phase their funding of the project over different fiscal years. So we don't have any control over what they agree to, but Trinity and the town will be going to speak with them before we apply in June to come up with a plan that all parties think work. So before the town puts any applications in, there will be off the record conversations with the state about what they're open to and how we all might be able to work together with that program. And like Abby said, we're investigating every program at the state and federal level.
So when Eileen and I and Abby and Ed Augustus walked around the property, and Jim was there that day, I don't remember if you were, Mandy, I'm sure you were. But Ed Augustus seemed to like your project, so.
Yes. No,
Hopefully.
our project.
We followed up with him. Actually, did I give you the pictures? I think we
you
had
did. I
some
think so.
pictures. Yes, there's a great book that Jim found on historic mental hospitals, and with beautiful pictures. And we sent it to him. We all have a copy, and Medfield State Hospital is in that. So we felt that the award was definitely indicative of his support.
He was a town manager up in Worcester, so he's familiar with the former Worcester State Office.
Yes, exactly.
He built a ton of housing in Worcester, apparently, when he
Well,
was the town manager there,
The
so.
Worcester State Hospital, but also Trinity, when Secretary Augustus was the mayor, completed the Worcester County Courthouse, which is a multi-award winning project that we've completed in the courthouse building, historic adaptive reuse. It's similar to this project, not similar types of buildings and campuses. So Secretary Augustus has seen firsthand our historic adaptive reuse work and what it does for towns.
Yeah, good. So my last question has to do with the items needing remediation. My expert is John Thompson on the remediation at the hospital, and I thought that we didn't have that much asbestos. Is the remediation mainly lead, or what? It's a big number. I think you were saying 20 million. What are the items that need remediating so much?
So 20 million was the most conservative number. We received a variety of quotes from consultants who would actually do the remediation. We're going with the highest number. We are hoping to be pleasantly surprised in this investigatory work that will go through each of the buildings and actually catalog what the materials are and the amounts of the materials.
I guess my question, Amanda, is I didn't think there was that much asbestos there.
Yeah.
Is that right?
So
is
there-
it mainly lead that you're having to remediate?
It's both. It's both,
Okay,
and then it's
asbestos.
also the mold that's resulted from the water infiltration. Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't keep it up for you, I'm sorry.
You know, the town has done a great job in controlling your destiny, which is what you set out to do. And these buildings, some of them have been abandoned for 50 years. So this
Yeah.
is just what happens. It's nothing that Trinity hasn't seen before. Like you said, you've seen the Appleton Mill building, which was only 3 walls at one point, which is now a beautiful and fully functional facility.
So the way the state informed us that they were closing the hospital was that they didn't put a line item in the budget for it. So when we read the budget, we discovered that Medfield State Hospital was closing. So it was a little difficult to plan ahead with that type of a relationship with the state, unfortunately. So there's a question online from a neighbor, Matt Perillo at 44 Evergreen Way, asks, in regard to remediation of lead, asbestos, and other hazardous materials, will you include in this effort daily air quality monitoring and testing of third parties? He lives right next to the,
Yep.
to ensure the safety of the workers as well as the neighbors and butters.
So we'll have to follow full state protocol in terms of air quality and how those are remediated, led under the leadership
Yeah,
of
you're not
Dan.
just allowed to
No,
blow
you
that
just
stuff
can't
off into the
knock 'em-
neighborhoods, so.
Yeah.
But fortunately, Trinity has planned for that in our remediation budget so far of the air quality management. So
Good.
they're good at planning that and including that typically in their jobs.
Thank you.
And you're good at communicating with the neighbors, so I'm sure you're going to get, as you get on site, some of the neighbors may be approaching you and just want to have that comfort that nothing's blowing in the wind.
And we've had a couple meetings so far already recently, the last couple months.
And Dan just said that he has met with the Evergreen and Longmeadow neighbors over the past couple of months and is happy to continue doing so.
And we'll continue to do that so we're on the same page.
Yeah, we've thought about doing site walks with Dan. It's a pending patent.
So Denise, do you have anything that you want to address the collected group about? Thank you so much for coming.
So thank you this time, Pete. In a project that is as complicated as is, there are many people involved, and there are many lanes of action. I just want you to know what I see as my lane of action, and I will do my very best in that lane. I serve the town of Medfield. I feel at the state level I reflect the opinion and of the select board going forward. And I am always confident that this select board, even with many residents weighing in, is also reflecting what the residents are looking for. I think in all of my experience, I have never seen a town meeting as astounding to me as when we voted unanimously on this project. The second part of my lane is to support the town administrator in the work that she's doing in any way that I can do that. So I thank you for your leadership. I thank you all for your work, and I'll stay in my lane and do my best.
Yeah, well, you hear that your lane is to help us get all this state money.
Right, she's in town Thursday night, right?
Yes.
Yes, and Denise is coming back, the 8th, is it?
Thursday night?
7:30, Public Safety Building, for your report to the town. Thank you. And Denise always brings great cookies, so. Anybody have any questions for the Trinity team? Thank you guys so much for coming then. We appreciate the update.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And the Trinity team will be watching the rest of the meeting from our cars because we have a long drive home.
Dan, I'm sure I'll see you up there. I've walked my dog.
All the best jokes
The
come in
windows
toward
kept
the
you
end.
busy with the boards coming off and people thinking we're breaking in, let alone you guys just doing your job.
Well, I got to know the buildings well, and the property.
Now we go back to Tommy Cronin.
I think, let's give everybody a minute to clear up, but firefighter Cronin has arrived.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever called him Thomas before.
I know.
Tommy or what?
Well, I work out with him. He's a big CrossFit guy. Tommy and needless to say, Jenny Cronin's husband.
Thank you so much for those of you that came for the Trinity portion of the meeting. We'll move on with the rest of our meeting now. And we would like to call firefighter Thomas Cronin front and center, please. Mr. Cronin, report for duty, sir. Every 20 years.
Every 20 years.
Thank you so much for your employment and your service to the town of Medfield.
Hello there, my friend. Hey, how are you? Congratulations, that's awesome.
Yep.
Wait a minute, you get the certificate, you get the picture, come on.
Certificate of Appreciation for 20 years of service presented to Thomas Cronin in recognition of his dedicated service to the town of Medfield.
20 more to go, you got it.
It's just the beginning.
Thank you very much.
Hold on, we're gonna have them come out from around the desk and do a picture.
Chief, did you want to say some words for Mr. Cronin?
No, we don't want him to say it.
Oh, yeah, come on, we gotta get you. Chief Carval's gonna get it. Do one with just the chief, and then we'll jump in. Do one with just the chief. No, we'll do that.
Okay.
Now you get to stay in with the rest of
Now
us.
I'll-
Oh, my, how are you? Good. We've worked out together. We've seen one another in our
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Wasn't that a year? Just
Scary.
There's still time though.
Yeah, it's not over.
One of these days, his arm's just gonna come off.
Okay, 2 hours in almost, and we're through 3 things. 13 more to go.
Now we're on a tear.
Now I figure out where we are. Hold on. Okay.
So we're up to discussion items, potential votes, 2024 town meeting, and FY '25 budget items.
Yes, so you should have a copy in front of you of the fiscal year '24 financial policy measure of compliance. As you're aware, we updated our financial policy in 2022, and the Select Board is now required to review and vote to certify that the fiscal year '24 budget that we presented at the 2023 annual town meeting has met the town's financial policies. And we typically do this once our free cash is certified and the tax recap has been submitted. So with all of that done, I am very pleased to report to you that once again, our fiscal year '24 budget has passed our measure of compliance and exceeded what we had estimated at town meeting. And just to point out a few things, when we first started doing the compliance test and we first put our financial policy in place back in 2018, we were struggling to meet 7.5% of our budget in reserves. And we are now at the 10.2% mark, which shows the dedication of the town, the schools, the department heads, the warrant committee, and obviously the select board in meeting and moving forward with those financial policies. So it's really nice to have some breathing room to be able to weather a storm that we could not do in 2020. So this is great news. And as required in the financial policy, this measure of compliance will be published on the website, and we printed in the warrant report that we'll be issuing just before town meeting. I need you to vote to accept it, yes.
All right, so
Do we have a motion then, Eileen?
motion to accept the FY 2024 financial policy compliance review.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Fiscal '25 budget update, Chris.
So I had originally intended, and I believe even promised you, which I gotta stop making these promises, but I promised you at your last meeting that you would have the full budget presentation for me this evening. We meet weekly with the co-chairs of the warrant committee, and after discussions with them, we anticipate they are going to potentially have a revision to their budget guidance that was given back in the fall in November to the school and towns. And that's based on the work we've been doing with the health insurance budget and the governor's budget and the local aid estimates. So we'll be meeting with the warrant committee next week, reviewing that budget guidance with them, and I'll be able to come back to you on the 20th with a full budget presentation. I didn't want to present things to you tonight with the list of cuts I had to make to meet the warrant committee guidance, because I think after the meeting next week, I'll be able to restore some of those cuts that we were made, and I'd rather present that budget to you as a whole. So I'll be back to make that presentation on the 20th.
Okay, thank you. How about the warrant articles?
So I apologize, I did not print out a copy of the warrant articles for you this evening. I can pull them up on the website, but I can quickly talk to you about the 3 I'd like to draw your attention to.
Has it changed
They're
from the last
Same as
time?
in the packet.
Same as in the past.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah, okay.
Same as in the packet.
Same as in the packet.
Got it.
And yes, I've numbered them. Don't get attached to the numbers. And Brittany, I apologize. I promised her I wouldn't number them, and then I went and numbered them. A few of them may drop off due to housekeeping reasons. For example, if you look at Article 6, actually look at Article 5 and 6, the Department of Revenue has now come down with better guidance that we think in terms of how we're going to hold on to the opioid stabilization money. Last year, they convinced us to create the opioid stabilization fund, and just this past December, they came out with a guidance that said, we actually think there's a better way, and we're going to change that. So I have put on here Article number 6 to create the opioid special revenue fund. It's our understanding, and we're just waiting for confirmation from the DOR, that we actually don't need town meeting approval to create that revenue fund. It's already been gifted by the Department of Revenue to set that account up with the accounting office. So we'll explain that once we have further guidance on that. But we actually won't need town meeting action. So that's why I'm saying don't get attached to our numbers. But there are 3 articles I'd like to talk to you about tonight. These came up in our discussions over the last few months that you wanted placeholders on, but we were not sure whether or not we were keeping them. And the first one is the town moderator 3-year term. Would you like to continue moving forward with that? Do you want to hold on that? We never really had a full discussion other than we said we would put a placeholder.
Is there my thought would be to continue, but is there an argument to not do that?
No, we just wanted to, we hadn't, we had put the placeholder on, then we never really had a conversation about moving forward with it. And we're fine drafting the article and working with Mark to move that
I'm
forward.
not opposed. I mean, ironically, we have a gentleman that's running this year. If I've heard correctly, there's no contested, so the gentleman that pulled the papers as of today is the only person running for moderator. So in theory,
Correct, and he was super
runs
shocked to see this on the warrant, so I did fill him in on it
So that's why I'm
today.
like, okay, so if he gets elected, knock on wood, he comes in, this would not impact his term, the person running again next year. Because I think I support it, because I did not realize until, I was like, that's crazy. Like Scott, all these years having pulled paperwork.
Won't even kick in until the year after that, because they get if it were passed at town meeting this year, it would be on
The ballot next in
ballot, so
25.
it wouldn't be effective until the following year, because the moderator, when he pulls his papers, that hasn't passed yet.
Okay.
So I would keep it, and I support
Okay,
it.
so we'll move forward on
um,
that.
Second one, Chris.
Okay, the second one was whether or not we were moving forward with what I'm calling Article 36, which is the Hinckley North disposition article. If we're fine moving forward with that, we will start drafting that.
Let me,
Well,
maybe,
did you watch the planning board meeting?
I did.
Okay.
I did
same here.
too.
So let me, and I actually would hope that somebody in the planning board might be listening.
Oh, that may be.
Or might afterwards. So I went through the planning board meeting, and I think I'm the instigator of this article initially, and so I want to let people know why I did what I did. The town owns Hinckley South. So there's a town asset that the taxpayers of the town were asked to pay for years ago.
They supported, not
And
asked.
they
them to-
supported, well, when we bought the full Hinckley property, basically the taxpayers were asked to pay for that land that the town could acquire. And in fairness, at the time, I think Mike Sullivan's view was the possibility that if the Olson property came up for a potential sale to the town, that could be combined with the Hinckley property, and he was thinking of potentially a site for elderly housing or senior housing or something like that. So there was a sincere purpose at the time. As things unfolded, we wound up having the Ice House Road project that Bob Borelli's putting up as 40B with senior preference, so that senior housing kind of got dealt with that way. And again, I think I was the instigator to subdivide the Hinckley property as a whole to keep Hinckley North for Bob and Hinckley South as.
Hinckley
I
South
keep doing it
Bob.
wrong.
I know.
I keep doing it wrong. I'm sorry. Hinckley South is on Ice House Road where the senior housing, see, I convinced myself I did it wrong by saying the other thing last time, so
It's
I
not,
delivered.
it's not senior preference either, it's senior housing.
Well, it's 62.
40B. It's senior, it's senior
Right, but
preference.
you have to be over 55 or something.
62.
62 to live there.
Fair enough. Yeah,
That's senior.
so,
huh?
Yeah.
You get
So,
to go to Roach Brothers before.
Anyway, that part, Hinckley South, is basically spoken for. The people live there now, it's under construction. The wetlands divide the property, so Hinckley North was a piece of property that was essentially an orphan piece of property, and it has a small, including the easement on one of the abutters properties, it's got a 40-foot, I think, wide access point to Hinckley, to Harding Street. The reason that I wanted it on to see if we could get authorization to sell it is because if the property now over near the Olson property, one building has been redone, or it's in the process of being redone, and the land next to it, or the larger property is being subdivided, so a second house can be built with effectively a private lane subdivision road cutting up through there. And as I looked at it, I realized that if that project went through just as we'd envisioned it, at some point down the road, there was property that the town owned that was nearly landlocked with only a single 40-foot wide access point to Harding Street that would involve us probably grabbing the 16-foot or whatever it is easement on the abutter's property. And it made sense to me that we should explore the possibility of selling it and doing it now so everybody who has an interest in this could understand we were looking at putting that property up for sale. Developers could look at it, abutters could look at it, the developer of the Olson property could look at it, and anybody else that had any interest in that property, whether it was to preserve it as open space in their backyard, or whether it was to literally develop it, they could do it. And it struck me when I heard that there had been discussions about putting an easement from this new lane that's being put in to gain access to that property through the new development, that would reduce the likelihood that we would ever have to actually negatively impact an abutter that we actually own an easement on. So my interest has been purely to do anything I can to make sure that the town captures the economic value of that land when it seems like it's the clearest time for everybody to think hard about, does anybody care? You know, does anybody care enough to want to buy
Well, I
it?
think it's something to say, Gus, that I think people get confused by. Is there's times we've bought land and we deeded it as conservation land,
Right.
right? This was never bought to be
Right.
open space.
Correct.
Right, so I think that's really important for people to delineate, easy for me to say. Because I know when people talk about 25 acres off of Elm, that's conservation from the
different.
word
Yeah,
go,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But this was purchased by the town, residents approved for us to monetize it.
Right. And so my view is, as a select board, we have a responsibility to try to protect the assets of the town on behalf of the taxpayers. I see this as an asset that's gonna get locked up, and it will be a nice, woods for people who abut it, which is fine, I don't object to that. But it will effectively, the way this could develop, would effectively ensure the value of that asset to the town starts to approach zero. And I'd like to test that in the market, which is why I wanted the article there.
Well, and listening to the planning board meeting, the one thing I would say is, I understand both the butters are like, why wouldn't you look at the easement that the select board requested, right? I understand the logic of the developer and some of the people who chimed in, that it's ledge, it would cost a lot to just make that easement feasible. So then you go back to if we were to activate the easement that exists and what the residents are asking for what's deemed, I think today, Garrison Path, just make it a long driveway. I think we could just make it a long driveway to what is ever in the back of that area. So we wouldn't have to make it a road. It sounds like we could make a long driveway to one structure. That easement would allow for one.
Running from where? Running from where, though?
Say that one more time?
A long
From
driveway
from
running
Harding.
from where?
From Harding to Hinckley North.
Oh, yeah, well, you can, except then I think Maria brought up the idea that the Dover amendment, you can do that, but you'd only be able to use it for certain, you can't just sell a developer that.
Right,
It would
exactly.
basically be like a Habitat for
Yeah.
Humanity. Yes, we can do that, and we have the legal right to do that. There's two problems with, the main reason I was looking for an alternative to that is that all other things being equal, I would prefer not to sit there and but to damage two abutting
I don't
neighbors.
disagree with that.
We have the legal right to do it, yes. But I would prefer not to do that if we can find a less intrusive way, and it seemed to me the easement that attached to Garrison Path would do it. The other reason that we may not want to do it, especially if that diagram of the redefined Harding Street Hospital Road intersection, which I was glad you brought up, we have not approved that.
Right.
But basically, because I live there, cars coming down Hospital Road, even though it's a 25-mile-an-hour zone, they come around that curve, it is a blind curve. And so what's happening is you're adding basically a blind driveway to the far end of that curve right after you get past the house that's on the corner. So it's actually not a really safe place to put a driveway. It's a legal place to put a driveway, but it's not really safe.
No, but
If there was a less intrusive way that didn't hurt anybody's property up on Garrison Path to provide access that way. From everything I've heard, so I never heard that there was more than potentially 2 lots up there. And what I'm hearing now, in terms of size, configuration, wetland standoff, ledge, I'm guessing there's room for 1 house up there.
The one that's
So-
proposed.
The one, no, nothing's been
An additional
proposed.
one.
You're talking about on the town?
I'm
line?
talking about on the town
Oh,
line,
okay, town,
Hinckley
okay.
South. Relative, there's 2 houses that are proposed right now with the Garrison Path project, or one that's actually there and one that's proposed. I'm saying the most I think we would put up there is a single house.
Right.
My interest isn't to put a single house up there. My interest is to extract the economic value of that land on behalf of the town. And partly that's because I'm trying to figure out ways we can throw some capital investment money that could potentially go to offset the cost of a school project that we're likely to see in the next couple of years. So I'm very mercenary on this one. We talked the taxpayers into paying for land. Medfield is not a land speculation company. We have something that has very limited value there because the big value was over on Ice House Road, and we sort of semi-gave that away in order to get the project that we got there. I'm just trying to say, let's not lock it up to where the value of that land goes to 0. Let's at least see if there's any potential.
So I don't mind leaving it in there. I just would like to have a discussion, and I know the planning board didn't vote on anything in their meeting. All they did was have a discussion. But to have them understand really where we're coming from.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's true, and I think we have a joint planning board, select board meeting coming up next.
Oh, yeah, next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Okay.
Is it next? Yeah, so we'll be able,
Yeah.
I'm anticipating we'll be able to do that, but I did want to make sure, because I listened to their discussions, and so many people are worried about what somebody wants to do with that property. Just to be very clear why I pushed for it, I simply want to extract the economic value of that land.
And what did we
If
pay
we
for it
can,
again,
on
back
behalf
in the
of the
day?
town.
It was $1 million, around $1 million.
It was
Might have been
1.1.
$1.1 million.
They,
There's
they
1.1.
have a subdivision public hearing open, so if you want to get the town or the select board's position in the record, you're gonna have to do it in that,
And they're not re-meeting until the 26th
but
or
you
something
won't
like.
be able to discuss it in a joint meeting with
Well, we can discuss it. They can listen.
no,
Why not?
because they've got a public hearing open.
Why can't they hear what we have to
Because,
say?
because they can only hear within the confines of a public hearing.
Oh, can't we talk before we open the public hearing?
It's the planning board's public hearing. The planning board has, the Garrison Path public hearing is open, so they should only hear testimony during that public hearing.
So if the planning board members are listening now, they should close
Yeah,
their ears.
That's it's a quasi judicial proceeding. They can
Is there
only,
any problem with the planning board when they come to meet with us?
yes,
Declare, no,
Yes.
no, huh?
yes.
They can't meet with us?
No, they
No, they
can't,
can
they
meet,
can't
they-
consider this issue.
Well, I didn't finish my
that
question. Is
point.
there any problem with the planning board when they come to meet with us declaring their public hearing back open?
I don't think they pose, I think they've.
They haven't
continued-
posted, but they have time to change. Right now, they said they're gonna continue it at their next meeting. But it's kind of stupid, Mark. We're sitting there, we're talking about an article. They, in their meeting, clearly didn't understand what was behind the article from the select board standpoint. And what I'm hearing is, well, but you can't talk to them about it. We want to keep everybody in
No, no, no,
maximum
I'm
ignorance.
saying if you want to give them input that could impact their decision or condition of their decision, it has to be done in the context of the public hearing.
We should go to their hearing.
Planning board public hearing.
Yep.
Either one select board member or the whole board go.
Great.
And make your pitch.
When we have our joint meeting with the planning board in 2 weeks?
No, it's next Tuesday, the 13th. We have our joint meeting for the MBTA
For
community
the
discussion.
Oh, that would be MPTA community, so so we will restrict our discussions to that.
But in theory, couldn't we just, because we're still 48 hours out, more than 48, can't we put an item on our meeting on the 13th? Because I don't even think it's on the calendar yet. I don't even think it's on the webpage.
Right, but they can't continue their
can't.
hearing to your joint meeting, I think is
They've
what Mark
already
is saying.
continued, as my
They've already-
understanding
they've
is
already
they
continued
continued it to a date and time certain. That can't be changed until that date is reached.
So we can't talk to them about a warrant article that we're putting out for town meeting? Because that's what open discussion tonight is Christine's asking, do we want to keep 36, or excuse me, yeah, I don't have my glasses on, was it?
36,
Yeah,
yeah.
36.
Numbers don't matter.
So, I caught myself in that. So that's all we're talking about. Why do we want to keep it or open or don't we? And that's what's drawing them, to let them know, we're not trying to sway them in any other way to understand, we own the land, we bought the land for a reason to do something with it, that's why we're asking for the easement. Whether somebody chooses to do something in that easement or not is going to be up to that developer. Everyone on that call was like poo-pooing, no one's gonna wanna buy the land because it's gonna cost a boatload just to blow the ledge out. But that's not for us to decide, right? I mean, that's.
We're under certain procedural constraints
No,
when it
I
comes
got it.
to a public hearing.
Okay.
I got it.
So if we want to get around this, we should go to their public hearing and talk to
Right,
them at
because
their public
otherwise you
hearing.
would prejudice either the applicant or potentially abutters, because
Fair
it
enough.
could have an
Okay.
impact on the decision.
So Gus, you have anything further, or?
No, I've explained what my reason for the article was. Those people who,
I say keep it, let's just,
Meeting
to answer your question, I say keep it.
I wasn't trying
Keep
to
it.
tell the planning board what to do. Keep it in.
Keep it, and we will,
Eileen, anything else?
On 36, no.
Okay, so my position is, I don't care about the Article 36. I don't, unless the town has an idea of what they're gonna do with it, I don't care about getting authority to sell it. I do care about the easement. It's silly, in my mind, for the town not to get an easement to the town property if that is feasible, because it makes the town property eminently more usable. It creates more options. It probably creates more value, as Gus has cited. And so that I'll go to the next hearing and tell the planning board that I think that it's in the town's interest to get the easement from Garrison Path to the Hinckley North property. Okay, anything else? Just-
okay. And we will, I will keep the inclusionary zoning until you've had a chance to have a discussion with the planning board, which I anticipate will happen next week, so we'll keep
Well,
that
it
for now
sounds
as
like
well.
two people want to keep it anyway. I don't care. So-
Okay.
And the next, you had a third one, and we've gone through two
That's
of
the
them.
inclusionary zoning, I'll keep that one on there as
Inclusionary,
well.
okay.
Yep.
We already pulled the Development Authority one off.
Yep.
Right, okay.
So what's the inclusionary zoning?
We're just gonna have a discussion about,
Mark, I think again, I was the instigator again? Yeah, I was the instigator again. The MBTA, so I don't know that it'll matter, because I think Christine clarified that the 40B, in order for us to get the 334 units credit for the state hospital project, if it goes through, we want all 334 units, which will get us to something like 17% affordable. I was reacting to the MBTA Communities guidance that basically said, oh, if you want to count 40B projects, you can only count 10%, because we don't want capital A affordable anymore. We want small a affordable. And so I was sitting there recognizing some of the financial issues that were raised in the presentation by Trinity tonight, not knowing exactly what they were, but saying, oh, they're having a bigger struggle financing this. Would Trinity have a more attractive financial structure for their project if they didn't have to make 25%? That's our inclusionary zoning requires it, but we didn't, at the time we passed that, we didn't envision a 334 unit housing complex either. If they didn't have to make the full 25%, would
40B
that help?
requires it anyway.
Huh?
Has to be 25% affordable rental, 25%, the project has to be 25% affordable to qualify under 40B anyway.
10%,
No, to take credit for the whole units.
yeah, to take credit for the whole.
25% to take the whole 334 units is
Right.
affordable.
Right, because this is a rental,
That's how that works.
right.
Well, it's all rental. Is it all rental?
Yes,
It's all
Yeah.
rental.
Right.
yes.
So
So
anyway,
there's an inherent conflict between the MBTA Communities Act and Chapter 40B.
right,
And also any attempts at local inclusionary zoning. Because when it was first proposed, MBTA communities, communities I'm involved with said, if we're gonna get hit with this, we're gonna impose an affordability requirement. And the state got wind of it and said, no affordability requirement. And then they finally said, well, okay, we'll let you impose, mind you, 40B, which could be shoved down your throat if you're under 10%, is 25%. They said, oh no, the most you can impose locally is a 10% affordability to qualify as MBTA communities housing. So there's an inherent conflict between,
So, I got all that. My point was, Mark, at the time, as I was thinking about this when I suggested it, was our inclusionary zoning is forcing Trinity to be at 25%. 25%, Trinity is fighting some unanticipated financial battles to finance their project. I was asking if Trinity did not have to meet the full 25% of inclusionary zoning, would that help Trinity from a financial standpoint be able to afford this thing? So when I said put this on, that's why I said that. Then after that, Christine pointed out, if you want credit for 334 units, it's gotta
You
be
gotta be at it.
25%.
Right.
And as I thought more about it, I said, well, if you have a 40B project at all, you still have certain limits to, what, you can't make more money than what you can make, however you set it up. With what I've heard since, and even what I heard tonight, I don't think this would be the deal breaker or the deal maker. So personally, I'm not hung up on keeping the
Which
inclusionary
we can keep,
zoning
Joe.
change, but that's why
Okay.
it was
okay,
there.
I just didn't know what it was.
Can I just make a
Yes,
comment? So
please, go
back-
ahead.
Back when we were reviewing the responses to the RFPs, both for Pulte and for Trinity, Pulte, I was looking to get the unit count down. For Trinity, I was looking to get more money for the town, and my question was, does it, reducing the inclusionary zoning back down to 10% or 15%, get us any advantage? Do we get more money from Trinity? Do we get fewer units from Pulte? The answer from Trinity was no, because they were looking for affordable tax credits.
Right.
So that was at least in
Yeah.
that particular case.
At some point, I think the way the towns approach 40B, we've tried to understand what the state wanted. The fact that we're even looking at 17% achievement would tell me that this town has not just sat and fought tooth and nail. But when the MBTA Communities Act comes out and suddenly the state's saying, no, we don't want, and all that inclusionary zoning we talked you into doing, that was a joke. We won't give you credit for more than 10% because we want small A affordable. And I was pretty frustrated by that because it's like, you're not even sticking with your own message. But I think we're going to work our way through it and we'll get to a good spot.
One more point. I'm not sure which one of the contracts that I saw this in, whether it was the one for the Mass Works or the one for the second one for the $500,000, but the contract calls out 25%. Description of your project. I'm pretty sure it was in there.
No, you're right. It does. Yeah, it does.
Because it tracks the LDA.
Right. So that was actually was another reason why I said, okay, maybe the inclusionary zoning article is a bad idea.
Right.
So I'm
we're-
okay with dropping it.
We're fine
if
with
you
dropping
guys
that
are.
at this point?
All right, now our numbers are thrown on.
See?
Well, we can add some.
No, we're good. Warrant's closed. We're good.
I have a question on one.
Sir?
On number 30, so I originally had, this is on the appropriation for maintenance and security at the Medfield State Hospital. So my first question was, how much are you putting aside for it?
Yep.
But I have a broader question, and that is, whatever you're putting aside for it, does it need to be modified as a result of what you heard tonight about the fact that you're going to be doing that maintenance and security longer than what was planned under the LDA?
No, we're still in negotiations with Trinity about what's going to happen long-term.
Okay.
Okay. Item number 7, action items. Accept resignation of Jamie Sullivan as associate member of the planning board. Do we have to vote on that, Chris? Or do we just say
Yes,
thank
you do. Sorry.
All right, so motion?
Yep, please.
Motion to accept the resignation of Jamie Sullivan as an associate member of the planning board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 8, vote to sign the ALS provider medication exchange agreement with Newton Wellesley Hospital. Chief, did you want to tell us anything about that, or are we good?
Yeah, real quick.
Okay, thank you.
Loud enough.
No, podium.
No, because it's.
You are loud, but we'll still get somebody who'll say, he's whispering.
Yeah, really, the purpose of the pharmacy agreement with Newton Wellesley, recently we've had quite a switch where we were taking 60% of our patients to BID Needham, where we have a pharmacy agreement. Over the last couple of months, it's actually switched, so we're going to Newton Wellesley more. So what happens is if we take a patient to Newton Wellesley and we give them medications, we have to drive to BID Needham to exchange the medications.
Oh, wow.
So what happens is that takes the truck out of service longer. Now, if you say, well, why do you need to exchange them? When we go out the door, we're required to carry a minimum set of certain medications. That's narcotics, all the other, the stuff that's not a controlled substance, we have a little bit of stock in the station that we can pull from, but when it comes to narcotics, we have to get that, we have to verify that we've given it to the patient, anything that's been wasted, and then we have to exchange it with a pharmacy. So this will eliminate that drive to BID Needham to exchange that meds. The other part of it is that the way that we've been doing it, because we're not bringing a patient to BID Needham, they end up charging us for the medications also.
Oh, wow.
So typically, the hospital will not charge us for those meds. They will just include it in the billing with the patient that's been on the intake. So it'll save us a little money and get us back in service quicker.
Good.
This is the third agreement? We have one with Norwood
We have
Hospital.
one with Good Samaritan Hospital, we have one with Framingham, we have one with BID Needham. This would finish it with Newton Wellesley.
Did we have one with Norwood?
No, it doesn't exist. right?
We still have one with Norwood, but as Norwood doesn't exist, we're keeping it in paper only because we
Okay.
still have established those relationships. So once the hospital becomes operational in 5 years
okay.
or so,
Yes, yeah.
Assuming it does.
yeah, assuming it does.
So that's one of the Stewart ones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice yacht that guy had, Delatorre.
Yes.
Super yacht, it looked like. Thank you so much, Chief.
All right, no
So-
problem, thank you.
Thank you for staying.
Do we have a vote to sign the ALS
We're good.
provider?
You good?
Yep.
Okay. Motion to sign the ALS provider medication exchange agreement with Newton Wellesley Hospital.
Second.
All those in
Aye, aye.
favor?
Aye.
Number 9, vote to authorize town administrator to sign MOU between the town of Medfield and MCAP for the DCF grant application.
DFC.
So this is the drug prevention grant. We are in our 5th year, and we're getting ready to apply for years 6 through 10. We recognize that this agreement says 2019 because that's when it started. And what we'll do is we will submit the initial agreement dated 2019, and they want an updated signature page that you are still committed to this partnership with the coalition and Medfield applying for the grant.
And when I read this, I assumed that the responsibilities list of what the town's doing, have they changed?
Nothing's changed.
So everything's.
No, everything
okay.
stayed the same. We tried to work through with the existing agreement since it says it's, we haven't discontinued it, but they want an updated signature page, so.
Great.
We good?
I'm good.
Yep, go
All
ahead.
right, motion to authorize the town administrator to sign the MOU between the town of Medfield and MCAP for the DFC grant application.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye. Chris, is Mary going to get replaced?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're working on that?
Yep.
Mary Haas was the person that was funded by the grant, and she's moved to Newton, a job in Newton. Number 11, vote to sign the warrant for, sorry, what?
Yeah, accept the underutilized properties grant. 10.
Oh, number 10, thank you. Accept the underutilized properties program grant for the Medfield State Hospital redevelopment.
And that is the UPP grant that you heard about this evening. If you can vote to accept the $500,000 and authorize me to sign the contracts, we'll get moving on that with Trinity as well.
All right,
The motion, please,
are
Eileen?
we good? Okay. All right, motion to accept the underutilized properties program grant for the Medfield State Hospital redevelopment.
Second.
Authorize the TA to sign.
And say that one more time?
And
Authorize
authorize
the
the
town
town
administrator.
administrator to sign.
All right, okay. Let me do that one more time, folks.
Thank you.
All right, motion to accept the underutilized properties program grant for the Medfield State Hospital redevelopment and to authorize our town administrator to sign the agreement.
Second.
All those in favor?
Say aye.
Aye, aye. Number 11,
A quick administrative question on that one. So just want to, given the discussion around the grants, the MassWorks, I'm just trying to keep my terms straight. It was originally a MassWorks grant. MassWorks has gone away. It's now been replaced by the new administration by this
Housing Works.
Yep. Grant. And the Housing Works grant isn't even the total MassWorks grant. This underutilized properties is $500,000 of the near $5 million that we're getting.
No, this is in addition to,
I thought, but
I'm sorry, my assistant would like to answer the question for you.
Guy, it's off the books.
You just stop sending me the documentation package and you won't.
This $500,000 is a separate grant in addition to the $5 million. So this is for they're looking at doing some remediation testing in some of the buildings.
And I think
Building
I
six.
saw 4.485 million is the other
That's
one.
4.485 is the Mass Works, the Housing Works.
Yep.
And then this is a separate
But when you add
500,000.
500 to 4.485, you get 4.9, which is 5 million. So when we said 5 million, is that rounding
They're
4.85
rounding
up?
485 up, yeah, yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Now I
It's
understand,
government math.
I guess. Okay.
So do we vote to sign the warrant for the presidential primary election on March?
Did you actually, you never actually voted?
On the other one, we
We
did.
Yeah, we did.
10?
We did, I checked it. I only check after we
I
said it.
waited until we voted before I asked the
Okay,
administrative
oh,
question.
all right, sorry.
All right, motion to vote to sign the warrant for the presidential primary election on March 5th, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye. Gifts, 12, accept gift from, can we do these all at once, Chris?
Sure.
We've got 3 gifts, accept gift from Mary Chouinard to the Council on Aging for $100. Accept gift from Robert and Linda Poisson to the Council on Aging for $80. Accept gift from Anchor and Ocean to Medfield Outreach for $1,200. Do we have a motion?
So moved with,
Yeah, so don't have to motion, I just say so moved.
Second.
So moved.
Okay, so move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And we will move those, Pete recommended, and we will move those, moving forward to the consent calendar for you. I can't imagine you're going to turn down any of them, so we'll
No.
move them to the consent
And
calendar.
again, an administrative question. So the only ones we actually have to do this on would be a direct contribution to, like in this case, COA. What I'm curious about is everybody that ever donates anything to any organization here in town going to get their name publicly recognized in a select board meeting? But if it goes to FOSI, that's just a straight
That's
FOSI thing
different,
and we're
yep.
out of it. If it goes to a town department like COA, or for that matter, Medfield Outreach or
Park
something
and
like
Rec,
that,
any of that.
then it has to be.
this is, I was just dealing with this statute, which is 53A of 44, chapter 44, 53A. It's mind-boggling. But basically, it breaks down and there's, they can be, the gifts can be accepted by departments and all. However, the monies then require approval from the board of, the select board to be expended. So you end up with some kind of action by the select board anyway, the way the statute's worded. So you don't necessarily have to accept, but you have to authorize whoever it is to expend the funds.
So the reason I'm asking the question at all is when it first came out, I was sitting there saying, will this influence how people do or don't want to contribute money?
So after you asked me that,
Yep.
you can submit it anonymous. They just need to talk to me ahead of time, and we can make sure, and we can list it as anonymous on the agenda.
Like that,
Yes.
okay.
Yep.
And I'm not sure,
Yeah.
maybe,
No, we
maybe we could
requested.
start a competition of who's
I know.
the select board recognizing for how much.
It starts
I don't know. Maybe
rumors.
it's a good
Who do
thing,
we
but-
think the anonymous person is?
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
thank you.
So Mark, if we vote to accept it, do we also have to vote to whatever it is you were saying, expend it or?
I think historically, we've just, actually, we haven't seen that many of these, but technically, it should be, and to authorize expenditure,
Both, as to,
Yeah.
okay.
because that's what's actually required, is the authorization of the expenditure.
Okay, we'll do that in the future.
It's a crazy statute.
Citizen comment, none signed up. Consent agenda, request to post signs at the usual locations advertising Medfield TV Trivia Night fundraiser from February 26th through March 11, and 16, request to post signs at the usual locations advertising the Medfield Garden Club's Art and Bloom from March 18 to March 24. Do we have a motion to accept those?
Or do a so moved, or I read those too?
So moved to
So
sign.
moved. So moved.
Second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting minutes. I didn't look at those, I'm afraid, so can we hold those?
Sure.
Town administrator updates.
Can I give a quick, on the meeting minutes, just to give you guys a heads up? So I did get them all done, and I think it was October 17th, whenever the chief was in to talk about the motorcycle.
Yep.
What was weird is it did not follow the order. So when you're reading the minutes, that's not how the meeting went. I'm not sure who did it, how it happened, but like, the chief is talking, and then all of a sudden, she talks about these 2 students that she's bringing on, but you don't see that for like a page and a half later. then she talked, so I'm not, so I just pinged Brittany and said, I don't have an issue with the meeting minutes, but it's the order in
We'll
which
take
it
a look,
played out.
yeah.
But there weren't any significant, oh my goodness, in any of the meetings. Just that one just stood out to me because it just was weird.
Okay.
Thank you. Town administrator updates.
A couple things. Well, Rep. Garlick already had discussion. She'll be here on Thursday at Public Safety at 7:30. I wanted to let everybody know you're going to start to see some action over at Hinckley Playground.
good.
You'll start to see the equipment being removed, and then we will be closing it to the public very shortly and getting ready, weather
Yay.
dependent, on opening it back up this spring. So, which is great. It's been a long project. And the other thing is, we have been literally working on budgets and warrant articles every minute of every day. So
Thank you.
we're hoping to have that presentation to you after we meet with the warrant committee next week. So that's all I have this evening.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Gus, your selectman
A
reports?
a couple of things. For the fun of it, I guess it was last Wednesday, MMA had a Zoom call on it was the bi-weekly shelter update, which is basically the Healy administration updating interested towns on what they're doing to shelter the immigrants that are being shipped into Massachusetts. The guy that spoke for the state administration's name is General Rice. He was wearing a suit. I don't know if, I didn't listen at the start. Because about the only person you see referred to as a general in a position like that would be either a surgeon general, or perhaps he's a very high-ranking person at MEMA or something like that. It was about a half-hour call because people didn't have any questions. They were talking about moving people into Melnia Cass and what they were going to be able to do there. There were some interesting statistics around the number of people that were housed, and I had that written down, and I think I forgot to bring it. As I recall, it was, I shouldn't quote because I don't have it with me. I want to say it was something like 700 families is what the state is dealing with. He said that Melnia Cass was going to be used until May, at which time that's when they open up the pool, and you've got a pretty angry neighborhood right now because one of the few recreational facilities that's available to that neighborhood is that. But they're claiming that they're going to only use it for 4 months, and then I don't know what happens, but the pool opens up. So we'll see how that works out. Didn't have a lot of questions. I thought it was interesting, and I appreciate that the Healy administration is at least trying to let people know what's going on in what I think is a tough situation. And then the only other thing I've got to report is we did get word from the DPU that the Community Choice Aggregation Program for Medfield was approved. So we're trying to schedule a phone call just to kind of say, okay, where do we go from here? Because there's contracting that goes into that. People have to be informed about how the program works. I have to get things set up administratively, but that actually happened a lot faster than anyone thought it was going to happen. So apparently DPU's got the message that there are a lot of unhappy people about how long it took to get those programs approved. That's it.
Eileen?
All right, a couple of things. I had my monthly Affordable Housing Trust meeting last Thursday. Just got hit upon our topics, which we have, the Medfield Housing Authority, so what's going on next to Tilden Village. We know that there's been some paperwork filed, and it's pretty much the same development that was proposed to Medfield 2 or 3 years ago. But we're gonna do a little more follow-up, just kind of see where they are from a timeline. Group homes, I know that Newton is still working closely with his team and Trinity to answer some of the questions that Trinity had. Habitat for Humanity, I know Kerry has at least located one piece of property on Surrey, I think they call it a paper road, that they're exploring. And then we just, I gave a brief update on what I knew about what was going on with Trinity and highlighted that we knew they'd be coming in tonight. So all is good there. I had a one-on-one with Megan and Hilly just to talk a little bit about what Medfield Energy and just kind of pick my brain on what I thought on various topics. Really great meeting with them. It's nice to see them. And then I've got my monthly Medfield Cares About Prevention coming up this Thursday. And that'd be that.
I think that Paper Street on Surrey might be wetlands. I've bushwhacked through there. I think that might be a problem if, I don't know what they're talking about, but. So I went to the Medfield Historical Society program last night on the Allen School in West Newton, which was founded by Nathaniel Allen, who grew up at Castle Hill Farm in Medfield, and then ended up in West Newton, and he created this very progressive school that was integrated. It was male and female, and they taught in a very progressive manner. And then he died, and it went out of business, unfortunately. But it was a fascinating film, very good film. They did the same guy had done a Hunter, Joe Hunter, I think his name, had done a film on Norumbega. My office used to be in Auburndale, next to Norumbega, and so I was fascinated by both of his films. I went to MMA school with lunch today. They had something Financial 101 on town municipal budgeting from the DOR, and I had office hours last Friday, and Jim Sujanin, I think is how he pronounces his name, Dr. Sujanin came, and he gave me these diagrams that he'd drawn of the intersection at South and Pound, and apparently the flashers are sensors. They're operated by sensors, and the sensors aren't working, and plus there's one of them that's pointed at a house across South Street. It's supposed to be pointed at oncoming traffic, so it's pointed totally in the wrong direction. He came up with a much better plan, which he shared with me, and I shared these with the chief and with Chris and Frank and all the important people. And that's it for me. Do we have any other business?
No, motion to adjourn.
Anything else this evening?
Second, all in favor? Aye, aye. Eager to go.
Not dilly-dally.
Thanks again, Medfield TV.